The city of Dubai is this it's almost like a real-world version of Rapture, a place where literally nothing should exist. And these men with just the power and the means came in and said, I want to build anything that my imagination can come up with. The beautiful thing about our city, our version of Dubai in the game of Spec Ops, is that there are parts of it that are real, parts of it that are the real city, but then there are parts of it that we've also come up with, and you can't really tell which of those parts is which. You walk through and sometimes you think, well, there's no way that's real, but in fact that actually exists over in Dubai right now. As this kind of living, breathing, but also dying city in Spec Ops, because it's been reclaimed by the desert, the group of Walker and his squad, Adams and Lugo, are moving through this city that's speaking to the past of what it was, but also to the juxtaposition of what is all of this luxury and overindulgence that has now become completely useless to the inhabitants of the city now that it's cut off from the rest of the world. What's happened in Spec Ops at the beginning of the game is that the city of Dubai has come under a stream of continuous, monstrous sandstorms, much like the Dirty 30s in the United States, when the middle of America was just constantly ravaged for a decade by sandstorms that destroyed the landscape. At the time when the sandstorms first started, Colonel John Konrad and the 33rd Infantry, who were coming out of Afghanistan, volunteered themselves to help with the evacuation of the city. The only way to get everyone out that was still there was to do a massive caravan. However, as they were getting the people out, the biggest sandstorm of all hit the city and all communications were lost. A permanent storm system settled over the city so that where you couldn't see it from outside of the storm, and the UAE named the city a no man's land in hopes of stopping any kind of looting. However, that's about 6 months prior to when the game has started. 2 weeks prior, the Department of Defense picks up a mysterious radio signal that has somehow made its way outside of the storm wall, and it sounds like it's Colonel John Konrad calling for help. And so you, Commander Walker, commander of this three-man Delta recon squad, is sent in to infiltrate the city in an attempt to find any survivors, and if you do, to immediately leave and radio for command so they can send in an evac team. Well, Heart of Darkness was certainly a very strong influence on the game when we were originally coming up with the concept, and it's very obvious in the setup that the similarities, or that the inspiration came from there. You have Colonel Konrad, this military man who has vanished into this kind of ruined wilderness of the desert that also happens to be inside a former metropolis, and this man, Captain Walker, who was sent and attempting to find him. However, as you get your hands on the game and you start to get through the world, you see very clearly that the two stories very quickly diverge from each other. Whereas Heart of Darkness was a story about learning more and more about Kurtz, Spec Ops The Line is a story about learning about Captain Walker and the two men in his squad, Lieutenant Adams and Sergeant Lugo. This has always been a story about what happens to good men when they're put in an increasingly bad situation, and how these three people begin to split apart, going on their own personal emotional journeys as they attempt to deal with the things that they are coming into contact with and the things that they are having to do in their attempt to save the people still trapped inside this city. There have been a lot more inspirations. Mine just personally includes the film Jacob's Ladder, the film Spider by David Cronenberg, many other films along those lines. I mean, everyone on the team has been inspired by all of their things that they have personally brought into the project. These moral decisions, they grow organically out of the moment, out of the narrative situation that the player finds himself in. If anything, it's more like a moral tableau. You have something that sometimes is playing out before you, and you're able to study it for a bit, maybe think, well, these are the different choices that I have, because we're not going to tell you all the time what the choices are that you have. And also maybe think, well, what are the consequences going to be? Because the consequences aren't going to be, well, if I make this choice, I get a better gun, or I make this choice and hey, I get some faction points. The consequences are entirely inside of you. Some of them will branch into the game, some of them will just branch inside the situation itself, but mainly, we wanted you to have to see the consequences of your action within the world and simply have to live with it, much like the choices that you make in your day-to-day life. Now, not all of the choices are set up like that. Some of them come at you very fast, very quickly, maybe in the middle of combat. You might not even know that it's a choice that's been set up in front of you until you react, and a split second later you realize, oh no, I've done something. but the choice is already over. You've already made that action, and now you have to move on, and you have to live with it, just like the characters in the game would have to, and just like you would have to in real life.
God damn. All this stuff is CIA.